Hi everyone, Kelt here. Oprah and Meghan greeted, and obviously the first topic of conversation was Meghan's bump. I found immediately the overacting was so evident from the get-go on Meghan's part. Meghan looks down at her bump and her expanding cleavage and seems to smile and pull down her dress a little to emphasise it all. Wasn't sure if I could continue watching all of this, if this is the way it's going to be with the acting, but I did. Oprah is obviously very professional, and she and Meghan seem to develop a rapport initially, but further into the interview, I see a few times where Oprah looks at Meghan as if she doesn't really like her very much, or perhaps it's more a look of not being convinced by her answer. The way I decided to make this video is by mentioning the things which were said which didn't ring true to me, and then giving my interpretation of it, rather than going through inch by inch to the whole video interview. So it will be more of a bullet point thing initially, which many of you like, and I know I like doing it this way. So first one, Oprah says, "You're having a baby." Well, that's more than a bump. My interpretation, I have no idea if you're pregnant or not, and many have said that you wear moon bumps, but that's a can of worms that I'm not opening now, but don't rule it out in the future, girl, because that bump looks way too big. Number 2, you are not getting paid for this interview. Interpretation, Archwell is going to benefit from this interview. Number 3, I went into it naively, says Meghan. Interpretation, I knew exactly what I was doing, had it planned for ages. Number 4, I never looked up my husband online. My interpretation, I read all the books I could on him and his mother, and watched Diana's funeral on repeat. Number 5, touching her nose, which can indicate lying, while saying, Eugenie and I had known each other before I met Harry. Interpretation, I briefly encountered Eugenie at the bar at Wimbledon when I was stalking Harry's friends, particularly Cressida, when I was travelling frequently to London and before I even met Harry. Number 6, when talking about the day-to-day protocol, i.e. curtsying to the Queen. And I quote, there was no way to understand what the day-to-day was going to be like. My interpretation, I googled how to roast chicken and I thought that was enough. Number 7, thank God I didn't know anything about the family. Thank God I didn't do any research. My interpretation, if I bring in God, a higher power, into the conversation, it will validate the lie. When asked about her chickens, I just love rescuing. Interpretation, I love that I got a prince to leave his family. Number 9, 3 days before our wedding we got married. Interpretation, we had a practice run with the bishop, but we were pretending it was the ceremony because we actually got married months before in Africa. Number 10, with regard to the ceremony in their backyard, and I quote, just the 3 of us, how special are we and in control that we can influence the Archbishop to change the rules for us. On Oprah, talking about the fact that we could see a lot of drama going on and Meghan starts blinking rapidly. Interpretation, I better get these tears flowing for the next performance. Number 12, now I have to talk about the bit where Oprah talks about Meghan making Catherine cry. They keep referring to her as Kate, knowing that she does not use that name anymore and using the word, using her surname, her maiden name, Middleton. Oprah should know better than to do that. It's almost like from the get-go they're both tearing her down. This part made me really angry. Meghan totally turns the story around, knowing that Catherine will not say anything about this or put the record straight. I don't believe what Meghan said at all. I think she totally twisted it. And saying that Catherine is a good person at the end of all this does not make it right. This was disgusting and she should never have mentioned her name at all. Even if it was true that Catherine was in the wrong, she should never have mentioned her name. She made the big mistake of singling out a member of the royal family by name to have a dig at her. The jealousy is so obvious. Number 13, and I quote, that was a turning point. Interpretation, when I knew I couldn't become queen, That changed everything. 14. Did you make Kate cry? No. My interpretation? I am such a fraud. I believe that she did make Catherine cry. It is said that Catherine had just had Prince Louis and might have been oversensitive, but I think she is so professional at her job and hiding her feelings that she must have been extremely hurt and to have actually cried. When Meghan says that Kate made her cry, I believe that Meghan probably switched on the tears for Harry. I don't think that Kate saw Meghan cry. It was allegedly over 2 issues from what I've been told. One was the fact that Meghan did not want the bridesmaids to wear tights. Catherine had said that it was traditional, and I think Meghan wanted it to be more natural. Kate's issue was not about comfort or being free, and it was more about protocol and what created the whole classy look. I understand that Meghan wanted them to go bare-legged. I think it was not so much the issue that they were disagreeing over, but more the way that Meghan handled it from my understanding and what I heard at the time. It was told to me that allegedly Meghan took her temper out on Charlotte, who was by then not wanting to stand still for the dress fitting, and something happened with the dress when Meghan was trying to make her stand still. There was so much said around that, and the only people that know what really happened are the people who were there at the time, and most of them are not able to speak out. I don't think it should have been brought up at all. I think Meghan should have declined to talk about Catherine, knowing that Catherine is very professional and very regal and would never be saying anything about Meghan when she has every justification to do so. Number 15, and I quote, "She apologised and I have forgiven her." My interpretation? Catherine took the blame for my justified anger at not being in control, and by saying I forgave her, I'm showing the world that I'm a better person. 16. If you love me, you don't have to hate her. By saying this, she's even bringing this up, shows so much self-importance and narcissism. Number 17. Regarding Meghan saying she was silenced by the royal family. My interpretation? She was told to stop yapping during the national anthem and other times because, as she said, she didn't know the protocol. 18. Then Meghan says that the royal family were prepared to lie to protect other members of the family, but not her. She's obviously referring to Andrew here. I don't know how any of them have lied regarding him. They made him step down, and from what I can understand, all of this has or is being dealt with. Number 19. A senior royal asked what colour the baby would be. My first thought was that what she really meant by that was that Prince Philip was his usual blunt and eccentric self and asked the question that all the senior royals wanted to ask because they guessed it was a surrogate carrying the baby and not Meghan. But upon hearing that Harry also said in the interview, but it was not heard that time, that the senior royals who talked about it were not the Queen nor Prince Philip. So that leaves basically Prince Charles and Camilla, or maybe even William and Catherine. But it could have been Prince Charles genuinely wanting to know who the baby would look like due to misperceptions about an alleged surrogacy. I think Meghan said this knowing it would be a real catalyst in her attempt to smear the royal family as racist, which most of us know they're not. Prince Philip has a wicked sense of humour and has made unwise comments in the past, but Harry has denied it was him. He might have been doing that because he's ill. Harry was very good at not talking about issues that would harm his grandparents. Not so much as regards his father. 20. After being asked what was going on with her in Africa, when she was asked if she was okay, Meghan goes on to explain that it was very difficult there. There was a lot going on and she was very tired, etc. People didn't know that she had been suffering. Interpretation? I seem to remember her allegedly saying to her friend in front of staff on the Pacific tour that she did not want to do boring tour shit. So if Meghan was suffering in Africa, it was probably from boredom. Boredom from having to continually play the part of a humanitarian, when in the past she only had to do a few photo ops in India and Africa to show Harry that they shared the same vision. 21. It was after the Australia tour when we returned and I realised I wasn't being protected. My interpretation? It was after the Australia tour, after I lost the plot and the hot tea incident happened as a result, and everyone turned against me. Even Harry was arguing with me and asking me if I was really pregnant. It was really hurtful, so I wasn't being protected from having to be accountable. Number 22. When asked by Oprah to give an example of things that were said that weren't true, seems over this, talks about realities and talks about things that were artificial and inconsequential. Obviously wanting to avoid the baby bump topic, she reverts back to the Catherine story. 23. Behind closed doors, we know I was pregnant, we know it was Archie, and we didn't know at the time. Meghan skims over this so fast, and her facial expressions and body language makes it look very much as if not only does she not want to even talk about this, she knows that it's a can of worms, and she would never be able to act her way through this, especially in front of Oprah, knowing that Oprah would ask very difficult questions. Many wish that Oprah had asked about the pregnancy, but maybe that will be part 2, if there is a part 2. 24. Regarding their first child, they didn't want him to be a prince or princess. Meghan is shaking her head here as if that was her goal from the beginning, and that he wasn't going to receive security. Oprah is shocked and does an exaggerated "what?" interpretation. Both of my potential unlimited cash cows were eliminated. Oprah is cleverly trying to draw Meghan out on this by acting shocked and then saying how and why she wasn't actually being protected. She was doing this in a way that made it seem as if she was confused, to get Meghan to elaborate more on this and to show why it was important to her. And it seems as if, to many, as if it was the prince status that was more important to her than the protection, because they wanted to be independent, and she's always been independent, so paying for their own protection, would have been easy. Also, they moved away from the terrible UK paparazzi, so what were they complaining about? Why would they need protection anyway? Didn't Meghan say that there were no tabloids and paparazzi in LA? Number 25. We haven't created this monster around us, referring to the media. My interpretation? We take no responsibility for the media frenzy around us, and my husband Harry still doesn't know that I was phoning my special splash paparazzi guy to be there when we went for a walk with the dogs and Archie. I mean, that was hard work, balancing those 2 dogs and carrying that child in a sling, and it's generally hard work trying to stay on the front page of the world's newspapers. He also doesn't know that it was me phoning up to arrange the car chases and drone stalking in LA. After all, I was doing it for our own good. Keeping our faces in the papers is keeping the money coming in. But Harry doesn't understand. He just wants peace and quiet. It's up to me to make sure he has both. Number 26. Now this next bit is the bit that is absolutely brilliant. It was worth suffering through the whole interview until this point. Oprah asks Meghan what were the family's reasons for not giving Archie, their great-grandson, a title, and therefore no protection. Meghan's eyes showed so much she was definitely not going to answer this truthfully. As Lady Colin Campbell had said in previous videos, the one thing which would prevent a royal from being given a title would be the legitimacy of that person. Meghan answers, I don't know. Interpretation? I can't ever admit to using a surrogate, so change the subject. 27. Regarding titles, all the grandeur surrounding this stuff is an attachment I don't have. My interpretation? Don't ever forget that I'm a princess and I will be queen of the world. Meghan was very agitated, wriggling around in her seat while justifying that having been an actress, a princess, a duchess, etc., she was just Meghan, and she was happy just to be a mum. Not convinced she meant that. Number 28. The question of the title and the security comes up again, with Meghan going into royal history and explaining how the titles work and how they actually changed this royal law or protocol, whatever you want to call it, while she was pregnant with Archie. And Meghan is obviously very angry at not having the title for Archie. Oprah asked her again, and you don't know why they never told you why? And Meghan says no. I think we all know why they changed that. and that will be the thing that will come out next. Meghan is still very angry about the way the royals did not give the titles or the protection, but more than anything about the way they didn't actually say that they did this. Maybe they would have had to say why they did this, and Meghan wouldn't have wanted that, would she? So it does seem as if they were protecting her at this stage, contrary to what she is saying. Maybe they should have come out with it all then and kicked them to the curb back then. But no, they were protecting them from themselves. Number 29. Oprah still won't let this subject go and asks Meghan that she must have had conversations with Harry about why they were not given the title of Prince for Archie. She looks Meghan squarely in the eyes. Why do you think that is? Do you think it is because of his race? At this point, I really think that Oprah is really pushing Meghan's buttons and also the R card. I think Oprah knows, which is why she won't let it go. Meghan cannot hide her anger. She really is inwardly quite stressed at this point and totally denying any knowledge of why the title wasn't given to Archie. In my opinion, she's being untruthful here when she says she doesn't know. Number 30. Meghan says, "But I can give you an honest answer." So does this mean all the others were lies then? Meghan then manages to manipulate the conversation around two alleged suggestions about the royals talking about the likely colour of Archie's skin when he's born. I think that at this stage she's just smearing the royal family, and she's knowing that this is going to create shockwaves within the general public, and those that don't see through her will lap this up and call for a republic. The royal family have always embraced colour and have had people of colour within the royal family, actual blood royals. Number 31. I can't talk about it because it would be very damaging to them. Interpretation. I don't want to be blamed for my grandfather-in-law's possible demise. Or, interpretation 2, I don't want to alienate my father-in-law anymore as he is still useful to me. Number 32. I just didn't see a solution. Interpretation. This was my chance to get Harry to see that he needed to leave his family. Number 33. This next piece where she talks about it when she got to the stage of not wanting to be here anymore, I am not convinced. I have sympathy for anyone who is genuinely feeling that way, but the exaggerated swallowing before she started talking about this left me feeling that it was a performance, just like the "nobody asked me if I'm okay" interview in Africa. To dump this on Harry, knowing what it would do to him, it's the classic way a malignant narcissist will manipulate someone, and it's just unbelievably unfair to do this to someone like Harry, who has suffered loss in the way he has. And later in the interview, he actually says that at that time when Meghan said that to him, he was going through his own dark place. So that's even worse for her to do that to him. It's difficult to watch this part of the interview. I don't understand how people are taken in by what I can see is acting. She is reenacting the Princess Diana narrative, and it is sickening. Meghan goes on to talk about how she went to human resources and was told no, they couldn't help her. She explains that she always had help in her acting career as she was a member of the union. So I remember seeing a video of her where she said that she wasn't a member of the union and that she was a fraud. Oh well. Number 34. On being asked if she couldn't just get the mental health help she needed, she replied, "I couldn't do that. You just don't get an Uber to the palace." Interpretation. This was not true. Royals have had help in the past. Diana had helped. Harry had professional help. Meghan then was more than able to pay for it herself. She paid for her own medical care during her pregnancy and birth, so she would have been more than able to have paid for some therapy. My thoughts. Number 35. Until we came here, that's the last time I saw my passport. My thoughts? Rubbish. How did she get to watch Serena play in New York? What about the baby shower? Didn't she need her passport then? And other times when she travelled. 36. There's a lot that's been lost already. I already lost my father. Interpretation. You mean you cut off your father. You didn't lose him. He lost you, remember? Number 37. Harry joins the conversation and says, or rather confirms, that they are having a baby girl, so a lot of happy clapping and cheering. And then the subject of having the security stripped while they were in Canada just before lockdown and how stressed it was for them, and Harry blaming the Daily Mail for revealing where they were. What about his wife contacting Splash magazine to say she was out walking down a remote lane with her bodyguards and son and dogs? He was trying to avoid the publicity, and his wife was allegedly out courting the publicity. 39. Harry talks about the constant barrage which they wanted to move away from, but Oprah does not look convinced. While Harry is talking about history repeating itself and that he could see things happening, he brought in the R card again, and the media, and Meghan was so overacting at this point, really trying to portray the victim. I actually haven't watched anybody else's videos or read any other opinions on this interview yet, as I wanted to just watch it a second time and make my own analysis of it without influence. What is so obvious to me is that Meghan seems to be acting a role. She wants to reenact Diana's life, it seems to me. Number 40. Upon being asked if he had blindsided the Queen, Harry says no and goes on to say that his father asked him to put his plans in writing. Harry says that his father stopped taking his phone calls. When asked by Oprah why, Harry says, and he really takes his time answering this, that it was because he, Harry, had taken things into his own hands. Meghan's face at this point, whereby she is glancing from Harry to Oprah, is looking like a rather uncomfortable child who is guilty of something, but it's not being talked about. 41. Harry shockingly says that the royal family is scared of the tabloids turning on them. Absolute rubbish. What is he talking about? They've had much worse for years, for generations. I think he's projecting here. This is what he's feeling about himself and Meghan. Number 43. In reference to the royal family members being nice to Meghan and welcoming, Harry says, that all changed after the Australia tour. My interpretation? That all changed after they saw the true nature of my wife, after the treatments of the governor, his wife, and the aides in Admiralty House. Number 44. Harry's talking about the similarities between Meghan and his mother, and really believes that Meghan left an impression, as his mother did, on Australia and the Pacific Islands, whereby she bedazzled them. I think even Oprah is surprised about the comparison, because it's known that Australia don't want Harry and Meghan back ever, and the palace even sent Prince Andrew, of all people, to go and try and smooth things over after the awful impression that Harry and Meghan had left. Number 45. It's like the elephant in the room now in this part of the conversation. Meghan being the elephant in the room, or rather Meghan's dark side to her personality, her controversial side. Oprah and Harry are talking animatedly, and Oprah is spreading her arms about all the positive stuff to do with them being welcomed into the family and how it should have been going so well and sort of what went wrong, And Harry is skirting around the issue and he's not really answering anything, always bringing it back to the R card. And it was never about that. Everyone knows that it was never about that, and he's still doing this. And Oprah keeps bringing it back because no one is talking about the real issue here. Meghan is looking like a little Bambi fluttering her eyelashes, and no one is saying anything about what Meghan did, about her actions, and about the fact that she might actually have had some actual responsibility in this, some actual part to play. Number 46. Harry is talking as though it's the royal family who are at fault here. He says that Meghan was the best thing that they could have ever had for the Commonwealth. Number 47. Oprah then turns to Meghan very seriously and says, "You, Meghan, are the one who calculated this Megxit." Meghan looks very fleetingly angry at this point in her eyes, but the point is made, and Oprah was just quoting what the general consensus was at the time. Meghan looks visibly relieved when she realised that Oprah wasn't attacking her personally, or so she thought. Number 48. When asked if he would have stepped back from the royal family if it wasn't for Meghan, Harry says that he would not have, because, in his words, he says, "I myself was trapped." Interpretation: what he really meant was, Meghan convinced me I was trapped once she knew she was sussed out by my family, and then she knew she had to get me away from my family. Oprah cannot believe Harry when he says that he was trapped. She says, "What? You were trapped?" She agrees that Meghan felt trapped, but she says that Harry was in this his whole life. Harry looks awkward and justifies this by saying he didn't know he was trapped. Oh dear. This looks like a classic statement from someone who is in the clutches of a malignant narcissist who is alienating them from their family. Or it might not be. Oprah gets Harry to elaborate on why he was trapped. Harry, still looking awkward, goes on to explain that his father and brother are trapped in the system and that he has compassion for them. He says, "My father and my brother are both trapped, and they don't know it." My interpretation? Meghan has convinced me I was trapped. Although my family and friends told me that Meghan had trapped me, she has shown me that it's really my father and brother who are trapped. So I have compassion for them, as I see that they are the ones who are trapped. The rest is basically talking about his grandmother and a good relationship they have, and she is still his commander-in-chief. And regarding his father not taking his calls, and Harry says that he is taking his calls now, and there's a lot to work through, Harry feels very let down. Probably not the best thing to do, to criticise your father to the world. Wouldn't blame him if he stopped the phone calls again. Harry says arrogantly, "I think I've tried to educate them as I've been educated." My interpretation? I've tried to educate them as Meghan educated me. When asked by Oprah about the conversation to do with Archie's skin tone, Harry looks visibly angry that it is even been brought up, and was probably angry that Meghan had mentioned it to Oprah before he appeared in the interview. And he refused to go any further with that conversation, and I don't blame him. I think he handled those sort of questions really well. Harry, when asked about what his mum would think about all this, says he can't begin to imagine what it must have been like for her going through this process by herself all those years ago, because it's been unbelievably tough. He was asked about the money-making side of things, and Harry says he loves his life now, and they talked about selling stories, etc. Oprah asked if they had any regrets, and they both sort of take their time and looking at each other. Meghan mentions Prince Philip going into hospital and how she just randomly called the Queen to ask how he was. I'm wondering if this was meant to make everyone feel better. Did it actually happen? Prince Philip isn't really in a position to be able to answer, is he? Meghan stresses that the decisions about patronages removal and title removals happened before anyone knew she was going to do the interview with Oprah. So Harry's asked, "How are things now with your brother?" Harry replies, "Space, and that time heals all things." It looked to me as if Harry did have deep regrets about his brother and sadness. And then when pushed to ask if he had any regrets, Harry replied, "No." And at this point he looks smashed, and I feel sorry for him. And then he says, "I feel proud of us." Oh my gosh, these do not sound like his words, do they? Then he immediately starts talking about Meghan and how wonderful and amazing, etc., all about her. It just seems to me as if he's very much totally under her influence. It finishes with Meghan saying that yes, she has one regret, that she shouldn't have believed them when they said she would be protected. And then she goes off on all of that. It ends with them saying how happy they are with each other, and it does seem as if there is a level of happiness there with Harry, but deep sadness as well at the same time. And with Meghan, it seems that she is happy at that moment, but will she still be happy if they have less and less in the way of being in the world public eye? Will she be happy with that? Harry obviously would. This has been difficult watching this video. I've watched it through twice. The second time really slowly to give my opinions, and I need to go and do something normal now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Please subscribe, ding my bell for more alerts for more videos, like if you liked it, and share. Bye.